She said no. He pulled a gun. The small-town pharmacy became a hostage situation in seconds. Police were 12 minutes away. But the 67-year-old man stocking shelves in the grocery store next door didn't call the police. He didn't wait. Because 35 seconds was all he needed. And because 28 years ago, he'd made a career out of saving people no one else could reach. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we dive into this story of silent courage, split-second decision, and a predator who picked the wrong town, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from today. And if you believe real heroes don't wear capes, they stock shelves and wait for the moment that matters, hit that subscribe button. These are the stories that remind us protection comes from the most unexpected places. The Riverside Pharmacy sat on the corner of 5th and Main in Barton Springs, Texas. Population 3,200. The kind of town where everyone knew everyone, where the high school football team was front-page news, and where nothing ever really happened. The pharmacy had been there for 40 years, family-owned until CVS bought it out in 2018. Now it was corporate, sterile, efficient. White walls, fluorescent lighting, rows of medication behind plexiglass barriers. The overnight shifts were still lonely, still quiet, still just one pharmacist and a security camera that recorded everything to a server nobody checked unless something went wrong. Sarah Mitchell was 28 years old, blonde hair pulled back in a professional ponytail, sharp blue eyes that had learned to spot fake prescriptions within seconds, and the kind of composed beauty that made people underestimate how smart she was. Perfect features, athletic build from years of college volleyball, a smile that put elderly patients at ease, and a mind that could calculate drug interactions faster than the computer system. She'd graduated top of her pharmacy class at UT Austin, turned down high-paying positions in Dallas and Houston. But she chose Barton Springs because it was home, because her parents were aging and needed family close, because sometimes the quiet life was exactly what you needed. She worked the overnight shift 3 nights a week, midnight to 8 a.m. The pay differential was good, and Sarah liked the solitude. Most nights, she saw maybe 5 customers, insomniacs needing sleep aids, truckers passing through, the occasional parent with a sick kid. She'd help deliver emergency insulin to a diabetic at 2 a.m. She'd talk down a suicidal college student who came looking for pills and left with a crisis hotline number. Overnight pharmacy work wasn't just about medications. It was about being there when people had nowhere else to turn. Tonight had been slow. 2 customers in 6 hours. Sarah spent most of the time restocking shelves, updating inventory, catching up on continuing education courses on her tablet. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The air conditioning rattled softly. Outside, Main Street was empty, street lights casting orange pools on empty sidewalk. It was the kind of quiet that made you forget the world could be dangerous, that made you forget predators existed. At 11:47 p.m., the door chimed. Sarah looked up from her tablet where she'd been reviewing new opioid prescription guidelines. A man walked in, mid-30s, maybe 5'10", average height, average build, wearing jeans and a dark hoodie despite the Texas heat still lingering at 82 degrees outside. Clean-shaven, unremarkable features, the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after seeing it. Nothing immediately threatening, no visible weapons, no aggressive posture, just another late-night customer. But something felt wrong, deeply, fundamentally wrong. The way he moved, too deliberate, too controlled, each step measured, calculated, not the casual shuffle of someone tired or the hurried pace of someone with an emergency. This was different, purposeful. His eyes scanned the store systematically. Security camera above the register, noted. Employee door behind the counter, assessed. Windows facing the street, evaluated. Exit routes, calculated. This wasn't casual observation. This was reconnaissance, military-style situation assessment, threat evaluation. Sarah had taken a semester of forensic pharmacy in college, had studied case files of pharmacy robberies and drug thefts. She'd learned to recognize the behavioral pattern. Nervous addicts who couldn't make eye contact. Aggressive criminals who came in groups, worked fast, grabbed everything. Professional thieves who knew exactly what they wanted and how to get it without violence. This man didn't fit any of those categories. His calm was different, controlled. The calm of someone who'd done this before and knew exactly how it would end. Her hand moved instinctively toward the phone under the counter, fingers inches from the silent alarm button that would alert police. But she stopped herself. Training kicked in. If she triggered the alarm now, if he saw her reaching, if he knew authorities were coming, he might panic, might run, might escalate to violence. And if he ran, he'd just find another pharmacy in another town with another pharmacist who might not be as prepared. Better to assess, better to wait. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe her imagination was working overtime after reading too many case studies, after taking too seriously all those DEA bulletins about pharmacy thefts and opioid diversion. But her gut said otherwise, and Sarah had learned in 8 years of pharmacy work, 4 of them on overnight shifts, that gut instincts kept you alive. He walked straight to the counter. counter. No browsing the aisle. No pretending to look at over-the-counter medications. No building toward what he really wanted. Direct approach. Professional. His hands stayed in his hoodie pocket. His face remained neutral, emotionless. "I need ketamine," he said. His voice was flat, emotionless, carefully modulated. No urgency, no desperation, no explanation. 500 milligrams. "And I need midazolam, 10 milligrams, liquid form, injectable." Sarah's blood went cold. Her training, her education, 8 years of experience all converged into one terrible realization. That combination wasn't medical. That combination had no legitimate therapeutic use in an outpatient setting. Ketamine was a controlled anesthetic, Schedule 3, used in hospitals for sedation, in veterinary medicine for large animals, sometimes recreationally as a club drug. But 500 milligrams was an incapacitating dose, enough to render a full-grown adult completely unconscious, completely helpless. Midazolam was a powerful benzodiazepine, a sedative that didn't just relax, it erased. It induced anterograde amnesia, wiping memory of everything that happened after administration. Victims wouldn't remember their attacker, wouldn't remember the assault, wouldn't be able to testify or identify. Chemical erasure of evidence. Together, that combination had one purpose and one purpose only: complete chemical control of another human being. Abduction, assault, murder. Sarah had read the DEA bulletins that came through every month. This exact combination, these exact dosages, had been flagged in 4 states over the past 6 months. 9 women abducted from small towns. 9 women drugged with this precise cocktail. 9 women found dead weeks later in remote locations, their bodies showing signs of prolonged captivity and horrific abuse. The FBI suspected a serial predator, methodical and intelligent, moving through rural communities, targeting late-night pharmacies where young women worked alone. The pattern was clear. The threat was real. The body count was climbing. And now the monster from those bulletins was standing 3 feet away from her, asking politely for the tools he needed to create victim number 10. Sarah kept her voice steady, professional, gave nothing away. Her pharmacy training emphasized de-escalation, compliance, survival. Never confront, never accuse. Stay calm, stay alive. "I'm sorry, sir. Those medications are both controlled substances that require a valid prescription from a licensed physician. I can't dispense them without proper documentation, DEA verification, and patient identification." The man didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at her with eyes that were completely empty, devoid of empathy or humanity. Predator eyes. Then, very slowly, deliberately, he smiled. Not friendly, not warm, not human. The smile of someone who'd heard that exact refusal before in other pharmacies from other women who were now buried in unmarked graves. The smile of someone who knew that laws and regulations and proper procedures meant nothing when you had the right tools to enforce your will. "I don't think you understand," he said quietly. "I'm not asking." His right hand came out of his pocket. He was holding a Glock 19. He set it on the counter between them, his hand still on the grip, finger resting beside the trigger, not pointing it yet, but the threat was absolute. "Now," he said, "get me what I asked for. Put it in a bag. Do it quietly. Do it quickly, and nobody gets hurt." Sarah's heart was hammering. Protocol was clear. Comply, survive, report. Don't be a hero. But if she gave him those drugs, someone else would die. Some woman in some other town would be drugged, abducted, erased. Her hand moved slowly toward the phone. The silent alarm. The man saw the movement. His hand shifted on the gun. "Don't!" Sarah froze. "Put your hands where I can see them," he said. "Now." She complied. Hands on the counter, visible. The man picked up the gun, walked around the counter, and stood behind her, the barrel pressed against the back of her head. Cold, hard, absolute. "Last chance," he whispered. "Get the drugs, or I put a bullet in your brain and take them myself." Next door, in the 24-hour grocery mart called Barton Essentials, Jack Reese was stocking the cereal aisle. It was mindless work, the kind he preferred. Pick up the box, scan the tag, place it in the spot. No decisions, no pressure, no life or death stakes, just boxes and shelves. Jack was 67 years old, 6'2", lean and muscular, with the kind of build that didn't fade with age. His hair was steel gray, cut military short. His face was weathered, lined from years under hostile suns. His hands were scarred from decades of work that had nothing to do with groceries. He moved with economy, no wasted motion. He'd owned Barton Essentials for 8 years, bought it when he retired, when he needed something to do, somewhere to be that wasn't the past. The store stayed open 24 hours because Jack didn't sleep much anyway. Nightmares had a way of keeping you awake. Most people thought Jack was just another veteran, someone who'd done his time and wanted quiet. They didn't ask questions, and Jack didn't offer answers. What they didn't know was that Jack Reese had spent 28 years in the 75th Ranger Regiment, the last 12 as a hostage rescue specialist attached to Delta Force and other special special mission units whose names remained classified. He'd operated in 17 countries across 4 continents, conducted 47 successful hostage extractions with a perfect record, 0 hostage fatalities. Not luck, skill, training, and an ability to make life or death decisions in fractions of seconds. He'd been in Mogadishu in '93, pulling downed pilots from streets controlled by hostile militia. He'd been in Fallujah during the worst of the insurgency, extracting kidnapped contractors from houses rigged with explosives. He'd been in Kandahar, Baghdad, Tripoli, a dozen other places that didn't make the news, operations that didn't officially exist and never would be acknowledged. He'd pulled diplomats out of embassy sieges, journalists out of terror camps, aid workers out of militia compounds, and once a senator's daughter out of a cartel safe house in Juarez with 12 armed guards. None of those guards survived the night, and none of them heard Jack coming. The government had decorated him 7 times, 3 of those medals classified. Ceremonies that never happened in rooms that didn't exist. Awards he'd never wear in public. They'd offered him command position, training role, Pentagon postings. But after 28 years, after watching too many friends come home in flag-draped coffins, after missing his wife's funeral because he was overseas on a mission he couldn't talk about, Jack was done. Laura had died of cancer in 2006 while Jack was running an operation in Afghanistan. He'd known she was sick, had promised he'd retire after this one last mission, had told her he'd be home in 3 weeks, that they'd finally take that trip to Italy she'd always wanted. But the mission went longer than planned. Complications, delays, bad intelligence. He'd come home to an empty house and a funeral he'd missed by 3 days. That was when he knew. No more missions, no more wars, no more choosing between duty and the people he loved. But old training never faded. Old instincts never died. They just waited, dormant but ready, like a weapon kept maintained even when you hoped never to use it again. Jack had a security monitor behind the register, a small screen that cycled through 4 cameras, 3 inside the store covering aisles and registers, 1 outside covering the parking lot. Standard setup for a small business in a small town. But Jack had quietly added a 5th camera 6 months ago. He'd mounted it in his storage room, angled through a high window that looked directly into the pharmacy next door. Not because he was paranoid, not because he didn't trust Sarah, but because something about a young woman working overnight shifts alone in a pharmacy full of controlled substances didn't sit right with a man who'd spent 3 decades protecting people in hostile environments. It was a vulnerability, a tactical weak point, the kind of scenario that got flagged in every threat assessment he'd ever run. He'd never told her about the camera, never mentioned it to anyone. It probably wasn't legal, and Jack didn't care. He'd spent 28 years operating in moral gray zones where the law was a guideline and mission success was the only metric that mattered. If watching Sarah's back from next door meant bending some privacy regulations, so be it. Better to break rules than attend funerals. Most nights, he didn't even look at that camera feed. Just let it record to a hard drive that would auto-delete after 30 days. But occasionally, when things were slow, when old habits kicked in, he'd glance at the monitor, just checking. The way you clear rooms, even in your own house. The way you sit facing the door in restaurants. Old training, old instincts, still alive. Tonight, Jack was restocking cereals, his mind on nothing in particular, when movement on the monitor caught his peripheral vision. He glanced up. The pharmacy camera showed Sarah at the counter, a man in a hoodie standing in front of her. Something about the scene triggered immediate recognition, not conscious thought. Deeper than that. Pattern recognition trained through thousands of hours of tactical scenarios. The man's stance was wrong. Too balanced, too controlled. Sarah's posture was defensive, tense. Her shoulders were tight, her weight shifted back slightly. Fight or flight response beginning to activate. Jack stopped mid-reach, cereal box still in his hand, and moved closer to the monitor. His eyes narrowed, brain processing the scene at speed most people couldn't comprehend. Threat assessment running automatically. Distance between subjects, 3 feet. Body language, hostile intent probable. Victim awareness, high. Time to intervention, unknown. Then the man's hand came out of his pocket. Even on the grainy security feed, even from 50 feet away through a window and a camera lens, Jack recognized the shape immediately. Glock 19, maybe a 23. Compact, concealable, 9mm 15-round magazine. The man set it on the counter between himself and Sarah, not pointing it yet, but the threat was absolute. Implied violence, controlled intimidation. This wasn't amateur hour. This wasn't some junkie desperate for opioids. This was someone who knew exactly what he was doing, who'd thought through the scenario, who was executing a plan that had probably worked before. Jack's heart rate didn't spike. His breathing didn't change. His hands didn't shake. 28 years of training kicked in automatically, bypassing conscious thought, moving straight to operational muscle memory. No panic, no hesitation, just clarity. Assessment complete in under 3 seconds. Active hostage situation. Armed subject with tactical awareness. Enclosed space with limited exits. Victim in immediate danger. Police response time, 10 to 12 minutes minimum. Realistically 15 in a town this size with limited units. State troopers, 20 minutes minimum. By the time anyone with a badge arrived, Sarah would be dead, disappeared, or worse. 11:47 p.m. The timestamp burned into Jack's memory. Mission clock started. Jack didn't reach for his phone, didn't dial 911, didn't alert authorities and wait for backup, because he knew exactly what happened in hostage situations when police arrived with sirens and protocols and tactical doctrine. Standoffs that lasted hours. Negotiations with people who'd already decided violence was acceptable. SWAT teams taking 30 minutes to gear up in position. Tactical command establishing perimeters and running scenario. Hostage negotiators trying psychology on predators who didn't have consciences. And in all that time, in all those procedures, hostages died. Jack had seen it happen in Kabul, in Baghdad, in Mogadishu, had written after-action reports on missions that failed because someone followed the rule book instead of trusting their training, because someone waited for permission instead of acting, because someone chose procedure over results. Jack Reese had spent 28 years teaching Rangers one fundamental truth that separated successful operators from dead ones. Speed and violence of action wins every engagement. Hesitation kills more operators than bullets. When you identify the threat, you neutralize it. When you see the shot, you take it. When you have tactical advantage, you press it immediately. When someone needs saving and you have the capacity to save them, you move right now. Not in 10 minutes. Not after backup arrives. Not after command approves. Now. Decision made. Zero hesitation. No second guessing. Operational clarity. He moved to the back room. His movements fast but controlled. Practiced. Every step purposeful and efficient. He unlocked a steel cabinet most people assumed held cleaning supplies and bulk inventory. Inside was a go bag he'd kept packed and maintained for 8 years. Never touched, but always ready. Old habits from a lifetime of being prepared for missions that came with zero warning. Tactical gloves, collapsible baton, flex cuffs, flashlight, and a CZ-75 pistol he'd carried for 2 decades and maintained religiously. Jack loaded the weapon, chambered around, and moved toward the back door that connected the grocery mart to the pharmacy's storage area. A shared access point from decades ago. Most people didn't know it existed. He moved through the dark storage room, silent, the way he'd moved through 1,000 operations. His eyes adjusted quickly. Ahead, through the doorway, he could see Sarah, the man behind her, gun to her head, forcing her toward the medication shelves. Jack assessed in seconds. Distance, 25 feet. Cover, pharmacy shelves, 3 rows. Hostage position, danger close. Timing, seconds. This was what Jack had done for 28 years. Bad person, innocent victim, narrow window, zero margin for error. Jack moved between the shelves, silent, invisible. The man was focused on Sarah, barking orders. Tunnel vision, 20 feet. Jack's breathing was controlled, heartbeat steady. 15 feet, 10 feet, 5 feet. The man sensed something, started to turn. Too late. Jack exploded forward. His left hand swept the gun away from Sarah's head, redirecting it with enough force to break the man's trigger finger. The weapon discharged, bullet punching into ceiling tiles. Simultaneously, Jack's right hand drove the baton into the man's kidney. Precise strike to the renal plexus. Paralyzing pain. The man's knees buckled. Jack's knee drove into the back of the man's leg. The suspect hit the floor face first. Jack's weight already on top of him. Knee pressed between shoulder blades. The gun clattered away. Neutralized. 35 seconds from backdoor to neutralization. Textbook hostage rescue. Flex cuffs secured the wrists. Jack tested the tension. The suspect groaned but couldn't move. Sarah stumbled backward, breathing hard, shaking, alive. She stared at Jack with wide eyes that couldn't process what had just happened. Jack looked up, calm. "You okay?" Sarah nodded, unable to speak. "Good. Call 911. Tell them hostage situation resolved. 1 suspect in custody, no injuries. 5th and Main. Can you do that?" "Yes," Sarah whispered. She grabbed the phone, dialed, her voice cracking but getting the information across. Jack pulled out his own phone. "This is Jack Reese, Barton Essentials. I'm the individual who just neutralized the armed suspect at Riverside Pharmacy. Former 75th Ranger Regiment, 28 years. I'm armed, CZ-75, holstered. I have 1 suspect restrained. When your units arrive, I'll be the one with gray hair. Tell them not to shoot me." Police arrived 6 minutes later. 3 units, weapons drawn, expecting a standoff. Instead, they found a man flex-cuffed on the floor, a secured weapon, an unharmed pharmacist, and Jack Reese standing with hands visible. Sheriff Dan Hoskins had known Jack for 8 years. Good man, quiet, but this was something something else. Jack, Sheriff Hoskins said, you want to explain how you took down an armed suspect in a hostage situation by yourself? Old training. Used to do this kind of thing. What kind? Army Rangers. Hostage rescue specialist. 28 years. The sheriff blinked. You were a ranger? Still am. Just don't wear the uniform anymore. By morning, the FBI arrived. The man was Marcus Allen Drexler, wanted in 4 states for 9 murders. The drugs he'd demanded matched the signature. His vehicle contained restraints, sedatives, a soundproof compartment with scratch marks inside. Sarah would have been victim 10. The FBI agent, Torres, sat with Jack hours later. Mr. Reese, you ended a 4-state manhunt, saved an innocent life, captured one of the most dangerous predators we've tracked. Most people would call that heroic. Jack shook his head. Most people use that word too easily. Then what would you call it? Doing what needed to be done when nobody else could. Torres smiled. You did everything right. Textbook rescue. You probably saved a dozen more women. Then it was worth it. Sarah came to see Jack 4 days later. The pharmacy had reopened. She found him in the cereal aisle, stocking Frosted Flakes. Mr. Reese. Jack looked up. Sarah, how are you? Because of you, I'm alive. Tears filled her eyes. I wanted to thank you for not hesitating, for risking your life. That man would have killed me. The FBI told me what he did to the others. Because of you, my parents still have a daughter. I'm here because you were watching. Jack nodded, uncomfortable but understanding. You're welcome. Why didn't you ever tell anyone about your past, who you are? Jack thought about that. Because the past is past. I did my time, served my country, saved who I could. That's finished. This, he gestured at the store. This is enough. You're a hero. Jack shook his head. Heroes are the ones who don't come home. I'm just a guy who remembered his training when it mattered. Sarah smiled through tears and walked away. Jack went back to stocking shelves. Cereal boxes. Simple work. Quiet work. The kind that didn't require thinking about the past or the lives it saved. Just boxes and routine. But every night when he glanced at the security monitor, he still checked the pharmacy camera. Old habits, old instincts, still protecting, still watching, still ready. Because heroes don't retire. They just wait quietly, stocking cereal, watching shadows, ready to move when someone needs them. They don't ask for recognition. They don't need medals. They just need the opportunity to do what's right. And when that moment comes, they don't hesitate. They act. No glory, no speeches. Just the job that needs doing. What defines courage? Is it the uniform, the medals, the recognition? Or is it the willingness to act when action is needed? To risk everything for a stranger? To stand between predators and victims because you have the training and the opportunity and the moral obligation? Jack Reese never needed to answer that question. He'd answered it 47 times in hostile countries for 28 years. And on one quiet night in a small Texas town, he answered it one more time. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. At Secrets Never Told, we believe the greatest protectors are often invisible until the moment they're needed most. Real heroes don't wear capes or seek attention. They stock shelves, watch security monitors, and wait for the moment that matters. Until next time, remember, safety doesn't always come from where you expect. Sometimes it comes from the grocery store next door.